We're going to be asking a Muslim some controversial questions. And so, if the Bible came centuries before the Quran, how can we trust the Quran?
Well, for one thing, the Quran, let me explain what the Quran's purpose is. The Quran comes as, it gives clarification. Quran actually describes itself as that which gives clarification to the Israelites on much of the theological issues in which they differ. So, meaning on topics that have been overlooked or forgotten. From a Christian perspective, because your question is essentially why the Quran and not the Bible. That's what it really
Exactly.
That's what it really comes down to. So, one of the reasons is that even in the Bible that we have today, that we do find glimpses of prophecy. In other words, that there's going to be somebody coming. Now, in Deuteronomy 18, I think it's verse 18, it says that there will be.
You know the Bible more than most Christians.
I've taken the time to study. I've taken the time to study.
Respect. Yeah.
Thank you. So in any case, even within the Bible, it mentions about God sending forth a prophet that will be like Moses, and that God will put His words into his mouth, and this is precisely what happened to Muhammad. Now there are other evidences I would say as well, or other arguments I could make as well, but in essence, that's one of them. That the Prophet Muhammad comes in within the same line of the same thread of teaching that existed with the prophets and messengers before him.
All right, so I wrote down a question. If Muhammad is the last prophet, why does Islam recognize Jesus as sinless, born of a virgin, and performing miracles, yet denies crucifixion and resurrection?
So basically deliver that without looking at the phone. So
Oh,
basically
boy.
you're going to say...
yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. If Muhammad was the last prophet, why do Muslims acknowledge that Jesus was born of a virgin, performed miracles, yet deny his crucifixion and resurrection?
Well, I mean, quite simply, we're affirming what is true. And from a theological perspective, because I think you mentioned sin earlier, from an Islamic theological perspective, prophets don't disobey God. So the ideas that we were discussing in another discussion, the ideas that are often attributed to the prophets, such as Lot committing incest, or David committing adultery and murder. These are things which Muslims reject.
Yeah.
So we deem all the prophets of God as being sinless, not just Jesus.
But why do you guys deny his resurrection?
Well, there are a number of reasons. Why do we deny his resurrection? So one of the reasons is that the way the Quran explains it, it says that he was not crucified. وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ, that he was not crucified or killed. وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُ, that it was made to appear to be the case. Now, this is a longer conversation, but I'm going to try to summarize it as much as possible. Okay. So, crucifixion happens for what reason according to Christian theology? It happens because of original sin. That Jesus, and tell me if I'm misrepresenting it, Jesus is said in Christianity, and most trans Christianity, he's said to be the one who takes on mankind's sins. That there was original sin that's inherited from Adam and Eve, right? And that this was a burden that was on people that could only be lifted with a perfect sacrifice.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so this is fulfilled within Jesus.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So this is a theological premise. That's a theological premise for the idea of the crucifixion and resurrection. Now, that theological premise is rejected by Islam. Okay. That theological premise. Let me explain like this. That theological premise, Muslims and Christians believe in Adam and Eve. Yeah. We have in essence the same story. There's some details a little bit different, but we have in essence the story is the same. Difference is that in the Quran, and this is one of the issues of correction, in the Quran it says that God forgave Adam. Not only that, God taught Adam how to repent. There are certain words that are given in the Quran that asserts that these are the words that God taught Adam to do repentance.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we really have time to get into that type of a detail, but the core thing I'm trying to say is that the theological premises by which Christians say that the crucifixion and resurrection happened, those are theological premises that Muslims don't accept.
Okay.
And I would also argue further that if you look deeply even in the Bible, that it doesn't seem to be universal or consistent. I would like that consistent in how it expresses these types of issues, because we have this idea, and I think it comes from Revelations. Look at Revelations. It's definitely from Paul's writings, about the need for a unblemished sacrifice.
Yeah.
Okay. But the Bible also says that, they say, for example, in the beginning of Matthew, John the Baptist says, "Produce fruits in keeping with your repentance." All right. The Father shall not bear the iniquities of the Son, neither shall the Son bear the iniquities of the Father. Right. So we have these certain threads within the Bible, which has the same idea, that is not necessarily a sacrifice of a human being. It's not necessarily a sacrifice of a human being that is required. It is really an individual's actions, because at the end of the day, we don't inherit, according to Islam at least, we don't inherit someone else's sins. We are all accountable before God for our own actions, for our own actions, not for the actions of our ancestors.
Yeah.
So I guess.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So I understand, like, maybe you guys don't believe the premise, but like almost every book in the New Testament says that Jesus was crucified and he was resurrected. So why don't you guys believe that he was crucified and resurrected?
Well, I mean, for one thing, this goes back to the reliability of the books. This also goes back to any of the disciples present when he was crucified. So these are sort of more historical arguments.
Yeah.
So I referenced this in the past, but if you read, for example, John Shelby Sponge, I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly, but if you read his writings, he has a book called Why Christianity Must Change or Die. He has another book called Reclaiming the Bible for the Modern World.
Yeah.
So these books, I think they articulate this type of issue, this issue very strongly. And the gist of his argument is that the entirety of those experiences that are mentioned in the New Testament, that the entirety of these experiences are in essence literary creations.
Okay.
So in other words, what we read in the Bible in this regards are not things that we can say that they say could actually happen. That there's a lot of scrutiny that can be made of the text, where the reliability of these issues will be put into question.
But I guess my question is, like, throughout the entire New Testament, we can agree that it says Jesus was crucified and he was resurrected.
I mean, like I said, it goes back. This other angle goes back to ultimately the reliability of the text.
No, but I'm just asking, like, a first question.
Yeah.
Do you agree that in the entire New Testament it says that Jesus was crucified and he was resurrected?
I mean, I agree that sentiment is there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not denying that the sentiment is there.
So why then would Muslims believe that that's not true if that is the premise and stated throughout the entire New Testament?
So I thought that I answered that question already.
Yeah. Basically,
you're just saying it's an error in the text.
Yeah. And which I understand where you're coming from. You're
like
saying you're questioning
the
the aspects that, because the thing is that I think that another way to look at that is that if Jesus really did die and was crucified and resurrected, then that would mean that Christianity is true. Is that a fair way to put it?
Are you asking me or him?
Oh yeah, just
I don't know who I'm
He agrees. I hope he agrees.
I agree.
Yeah. But you don't have to answer that. I guess I would just flip it.
No. Answer that.
Well. So if Jesus was resurrected, would that mean Christianity is true?
if Jesus was resurrected, when Muslims believe there's a day of resurrection, that people are going to.
But as described in the Gospels, that
like in the Bible,
condemned by Pontius Pilate, crucified,
Mm-hmm.
3 days, resurrected.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think it necessarily would prove Christianity to be false or true. It is what we're talking about here is two things. We're talking about theology, but we're also talking about history.
Yeah, I'm talking about history.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about specifically history because there's proof that from the earliest Christians, they believe that Jesus died and was resurrected, and there's like secular proof that that's what everyone believes.
Even in the Quran, okay, when it talks about this issue, it says, وَلَكِنْ شُبِهَ لَهُ. It was made to appear to be the case. So in other words, yes, it's not denying that this is what people believed. I mean, the Quran isn't denying that people think that.
Yeah.
But what it's saying is that that's not the way it happened. What it's saying is that in this regard, that Jesus, again, there are premises. And so I think we might have to go into some detail about the premises. So another issue I think is important in talking about the crucifixion of Jesus, or the apparent crucifixion of Jesus, is that first of all, why was he crucified? He's crucified, as I mentioned earlier, to take on humanity's sins.
Yeah.
All right. But why did the Jews want to crucify him?
Because of blasphemy.
Is there anything else? Why crucifixion?
I think blasphemy and all the other rebellious things he was doing.
Okay. The reason they wanted to crucify him, because in Deuteronomy it says that the one who is hung on a tree or a cross is cursed by God. They wanted to prove that he was indeed a cursed person.
Okay.
Okay. This is the reason. And I think that if you ask maybe a Christian scholar, I think they'll agree with that assertion. That this is why they wanted to kill him like that. They could have killed him any other kind of way, but they wanted him killed in this particular way because to them, according to the Old Testament text, this will be evidence that Jesus was in fact a cursed man. He was not a blessed man. He was actually a cursed man. All right. So Quran teaches this. Says no, Jesus was not a cursed man. He was a blessed man.
Oh, so that's why you guys. That's one reason why you guys believe he wasn't crucified because of.
Yeah, because so what happens is in the New Testament, Paul, he says, well, yes, Jesus was I'm paraphrasing the idea. Paul says, look, yes, he was a curse, but he's a curse for mankind, to benefit mankind. All right. So Islam says, look. He was not cursed. He was blessed.
Yeah.
He was blessed by God. So God is not going to let him have that fate. Now, people might think that's his fate, but that's not really going to be his fate. So the only thing the Quran says is that he was not crucified. That's all it says. He was not crucified. He was not killed. In fact, it says, "Bal rafa'allahu ilayhi," that God elevated him. Now, this has a couple of different understandings. But the understanding that I'm going to share, that I'm going to really focus on, is that the prestige of Jesus is lifted. And what I mean by that is, again, if someone dies by crucifixion, right? Usually they reserve that for political enemies or for the worst criminals.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a punishment reserved for, generally speaking, for the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Some people who should be forgotten in history. All right, but that's not what happened with Jesus. That Jesus, his reputation, his status, is elevated in people's eyes.
Yeah.
So the majority of people on earth, Muslims and Christians, because the majority of religions of people in the world are Muslims and Christians, they both accept Jesus. There are other non-Abrahamic religious people who have some ideas of Jesus within their writings, or within their, I shouldn't say writings, but within their communities. That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
But in core, what I'm trying to say here is that the Quranic expression was fulfilled. That Jesus' reputation was elevated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you believe Jesus was Muslim?
Of course, but you have to understand what a Muslim means. Muslim doesn't see. This is an issue that keeps getting asked, and I don't understand why people don't get what we're saying. Because I don't understand why people don't get it. Muslim is just an Arabic word which means submission to God. In fact, let me invert the question. Was Jesus a Christian?
Yeah.
Do you agree with him? Was Jesus a Christian?
He wouldn't use that exact word.
He would, and not only would not use that exact
Yeah.
word, according to the Bible, according to Acts, the followers of Jesus were called Christians by their enemies.
Mhm.
Jesus never used the term Christian, according to the Bible.
Yeah, but Christian just means to follow Christ.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
the point I'm making is that as a label, Jesus was not. He did not refer to himself as Christian. That's a term that was used later on by the enemies to distinguish from the followers of Jesus who were praying in the synagogues.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say to answer the question, Muslim is just an Arabic word which means the person who does the action submission to God. Now that doesn't mean that he had the same laws that Muhammad had. It doesn't mean that he did the prayers in the exact same way that we do our prayers, but he submitted himself to God. That's a Muslim.
I think that's what, when I asked what Jesus was a Muslim, I'm asking like, did Jesus follow what Muhammad was preaching?
They had different laws.
They had different laws.
Different laws, but that they still work for the same boss.
They still work for the same boss, but they have different theologies.
No, I don't think
different laws.
laws, not necessarily different theologies, because Jesus says, according to the Bible, love the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul. He preached the Shema. You know, hear you, O Israel, the Lord. What is the most important command? Hear you, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one God.
Yeah.
The Shema. Muslims believe in the Shema. We're on the same page when it comes to that.
Mhm.
Now the laws are different. Jesus, even according to the Bible, he had certain expressions of the law that were different from the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is one of the reasons that, according to the Bible, that the Jews had a problem with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my last question before we move on to the other stuff is, if you prayed
Yeah.
and Jesus were to appear to you
Okay.
and say Christianity is true, would you then be a Christian?
So this is going back to the subjective conversation that we were having in a previous discussion.
Uh-huh.
So, the thing is that we have to match up with what is rational, what makes sense, what
100%.
what is true.
Yep.
Okay, I mean, we could have I could have a dream. I could tell you some dreams I had like 2 or 3 days ago that were wild, but that doesn't mean that that was actually that doesn't mean I actually had that was actually a truthful experience.
Yeah.
So, what Jesus was upon, he was a worshiper of the Lord God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he taught people, he warned people against immorality. He was very much against materialism. He was very much against ritualism. The ritualism that was devoid of authentic spiritual content.
Yeah.
So these are the things that he was about. So even he says, according to the Bible, I don't come to do my own will. I follow the will of the one who sent me.
Yeah.
Okay. So this in a sense, I'm mirroring all the questions together. But he is a Muslim. He is the one that submitted to God. But the laws that he followed were not the same laws that Muhammad followed.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to use another example. If you work for a corporation and you work in, let's say for example, the United States,
Yes.
and then you have another person working for the same corporation, but he or she works in Japan, you're still working for the same corporation. Maybe the other person he or she is involved in the Japanese context.
Yeah.
But you're still which is unique to them.
Yeah.
But it's still working for the same boss.
Yeah. So if Jesus appeared to you and said, I'm serious, if Jesus appeared to you and said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, there is no other way to the Father except through me.
So I already believe in Jesus.
Uh-huh.
So Jesus doesn't need to come to me like that because I already believe in Jesus. I already believe that he was somebody whom God sent.
Yeah.
So Jesus don't need to do that.
Okay.
Frankly, Jesus does not.
But then
need
would
to
you be Christian? Would you say, hey, I am a Christian, I believe in you, and I follow your laws?
But Jesus didn't. Well, let me back up here. So you know that Jesus, even though his 3 year, according to most Christians, there's some who say 6 years, but the majority say 3 years was his ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of an actual law, did he actually do much in terms of bringing that law to earth?
Mm-hmm.
He was never a king. He
Mm-hmm.
was never a political leader.
Mm-hmm.
He never got married.
Mm-hmm.
is according to mainstream understanding. He never got married.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of law, he has certain principles. Yes.
Yeah.
He has certain principles, but in terms of putting a law into practice, he didn't do that. He didn't do that in terms of putting a law into a practical sense.
Mm-hmm.
Moses did that.
Mm-hmm.
Muhammad did that, but Jesus did not do that.
So the answer is no, pretty much.
I mean, it's like asking the same question.
Yeah.
And the thing.
But your answer is just like no, pretty much no.
I mean, this answer, like I said, in the example I gave about Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because what you're saying, again, number one, I already accept Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's already a done deal. I already believe in Jesus.
But you don't believe he's God.
Well, Jesus didn't believe he was God. I mean, Jesus said, "I don't do my own will, but the will of him who sent me."
Yeah.
So he already distinguished himself from God.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I should be asking you, when are you going to follow Jesus? In accepting that Jesus humbled himself before God.
Mm-hmm. I believe that he humbled himself to the Father while he was here on earth with flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe in the Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, Jesus, even in the four Gospels, never clearly articulated Trinity. Trinity did not become an official doctrine until the Council of Nicaea in 325. Trinity
But he did say me and the Father are one.
There's a context. No, yeah. I'm not a Bible scholar.
Yeah.
But there is a context. I read this context. There is I and my Father are one is given in a broader context. There is a broader context, and I'm trying to remember the broader context. If I remember right, the broader context is where Jesus is talking about people that use the word Solomon's porch, in reference to the temple, the Jerusalem temple.
Yeah.
And the context of that statement is basically one in purpose.
Yeah.
In terms of giving support and assistance to his followers.
Yeah.
Not this notion that they are somehow the same being.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to debate if, Christians should believe Jesus is God or not, because anyone that reads the Bible would understand that they are saying in the Bible is that Jesus was God. That's
you and I both know. Well, I shouldn't speak for you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that, so I take that back. But this idea that Jesus is God, this has not been universally accepted from the beginning of the history of the Christian community up to now.
Yeah.
In today's world, you have a number of denominations who do not believe Jesus is God.
Yeah.
And in the past, you had stronger denominations who did not believe Jesus is God, but these denominations were essentially persecuted out of existence or made into the margins of Christian community.
Yeah.
So again, Council of Nicaea 325 is when the idea of Trinity, because the idea of Trinity is one of many ideas. Mm-hmm. There are many ideas surrounding the identity of Jesus, the identity, the role of Jesus. There are many ideas. Trinity was just one of them.
Yeah.
And Trinity bears more resemblance to the articulation of God that exists, say, for example, in Greek and Roman thought, or the articulation of the divine as expressed within even ancient Egyptian religion. Mm-hmm. It doesn't come close to the Shema. Mm-hmm. Hear this, O Israel, the Lord our God, Lord your God is one God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess that all of this is with the guiding principle that the Quran is true and that the Bible has been corrupted, correct?
Okay.
And so we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have the witness of the 12 apostles, we have secular historians who acknowledge Jesus' existence. So why should I trust the Quran and mistrust the Bible?
Well, again, we had this previous conversation earlier. First of all, were the disciples actually present when Jesus was crucified? And second of all, is that the Gospels themselves are largely anonymous works.
Well, Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was resurrected.
I mean,
fair.
I could say that someone came to me a couple of nights ago, in a dream. What does that prove? It doesn't prove anything.
But then
it's subjective.
No, I get it.
You can say that about anything.
No, that's a fair concern. And I guess that what I would be looking for is that if if Islam is true,
Yeah.
I'll convert tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so, what are your guys' independent sources that prove that the Quran is a legitimate source? You know what I mean? Like, like archaeological evidence, or like secular historians at the time who say that these things that you guys observe, like we've observed that, a lot of people say that it's true, or you know what I'm talking about. So how do you know the Quran is true?
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. If you're asking me, like, for example, if Muhammad existed, and if you're asking me, for example, that there's evidence that Prophet Muhammad existed. Of course, there's evidence Prophet Muhammad existed. I mean, his tomb is there, and his tomb is buried. He's buried in a certain place in Medina, right? There is an entire civilization that emerges after his death, and it goes from point A to point B. Everything is pretty well documented in terms of that.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of the pilgrimage, in terms of everything that Muslims do, those things are very well documented. So, really, the question, I think, is look at the teachings, look at the theology. Is it rational? Does it make sense? Does it line up with what we should know from our own rational sides, our own natural sides? Does it line up with that? That should be the real question.